When PD took a short spin on the BMW G310 GS in Delhi, he left us with this thought.
At least for now, if you want a smallish, somewhat affordable ADV that's more touring than outright adventure, the BMW G310 GS, well, that's your only choice, isn't it?
So now the question that you need to ask is the only choice the right choice? And more importantly, does this bike fit the GS badge of honor? I am Jehan, welcome to ZigWheels, and this is the real world test of the BMW G310 GS. So let's just start off with the adventure section of our test, because that is where a GS motorcycle shines. But this isn't the right helmet. This is. So there are a few problems. Let's just tackle off with the way one stands on this. And right off the bat, there is a small issue. Well, once you stand for the off-roading posture, your natural comfortable posture should be somewhere around here. But for this, I need to bend forward and be in sort of like an attack mode, which is not favorable always. So perhaps I would like to get handlebar risers for this. So whereas the handlebars come here, and I get a much better posture when I want to take it off-roading like this. At both ends of the bike, you get long travel suspension, and that means it soaks up the bumps and the undulations really quite nicely, especially the front with its quite soft damping. It takes in the bounce quite nicely. The rear has a tendency to give it one back to you once in a while, but yeah, overall the suspension setup is really nice when you want to take it off-road. Also, you get a 19-inch front and a 17-inch rear wheel setup, which is generally the new adventure touring setup. And you get these lovely Metzeler Tourance tires, which do a good job of keeping the bike on its feet when you're taking on the dirty stuff. Unlike the G310R, you get switchable ABS on the GS, wherein you can kill the ABS intervention on the rear wheel. This comes handy when you're going off-road. So does it mean that the BMW G310 GS is a go-anywhere motorcycle? Well, no. There are three reasons why no. Firstly is this engine. The engine doesn't have adequate low-down torque, and that is something which we will tackle a little bit later. Secondly is the front suspension. When you're in attack mode, you are loading up the front more. That makes it a bit nervous. That makes it a bit jittery. And that isn't quite confidence inspiring when you're taking out to say the hardcore trails, the hardcore off-roading bits. Soft roading or taking on the bumps and undulations a bit, that's quite nice. And lastly, it doesn't get adequate off-road protection. And by that I mean this plastic belly pan is not going to help your cause one bit. There is no hand protectors, no engine guards, so you will need to invest in some proper off-roading equipment to protect your bike. So the BMW G310 GS, it does an okay job when it comes to the adventure bits. But what about when you want to go hit the highway, munch some miles? Well, let's find out. But before that, yep, that's the right one. Again, let's just start off with the posture. Here, the bars have got good leverage on them. The pegs, well, they are in a very neutral state, very comfortable state. So I'm not stressing it out too much. My butt, even though it's fairly a bit too high, but it gives me a good commanding view of the road ahead. And that all makes it a very favorable package when I want to go touring. Another good bit about this GS is that you get this large grab handle cum luggage rack, and it's got these neat little grooves for your straps to fit in. So you need not worry about how and where to mount your luggage systems when you want to go cross-country riding. What about two-up riding? Well, the seat foam is quite soft and the large grab handle is chunky and good to grip. But it is not an ideal pillion-friendly tourer, and that is mainly due to the pillion foot pegs. they make for a very cramped seating posture. Thigh aches are definitely in store for your pal. So for short city bursts, it is fine, but out on the highway, a very hard pass. Well, this might seem quite large, but underneath this plastic shroud is just the same 11-litre fuel tank that you get in the G310R. And when you compare the highway fuel efficiency numbers, you get a good amount of range. But that is in ideal conditions. When you are loading up with your luggage, when you ride spiritedly, the efficiency is bound to drop. And that means in a real world test, you might just get 280 or 290 kilometers out, and that is fairly adequate for a bike of this size. But when you say it's an adventure tourer, I would like to have a slightly larger tank, perhaps a 14 liters, which will help me say do 400-450 kilometers on a stretch. Another issue that I have with this bike is the engine. If you are riding it at 80-90 kmph out on the highway, it's fine, it's no fuss, no problem. But as soon as you start moving towards the 100 kmph mark, as soon as you start pushing it a bit more, there are vibrations which are significantly felt through over here at the tank, a little bit at the bars, and most prominently here at the pegs. So it is not a nice favorable position. So 100 kmph, I would not advise it. But riding it at 80-90 kmph, it will do just fine. Another thing to remember is, do not remove those rubber inserts from these serrated foot pegs. Well, these foot pegs will offer good grip and good bite for your boots when you're out doing off-road bits, but out on the highway, this will be a nuisance. So remember to put those rubber inserts back on, and don't be a fool like us who left these back in the office. So once again, it's not that great when it comes to touring, but at least is the performance exciting enough? Even though this engine appears in the same state of tune as the R, due to the extra weight, roughly amounts to say 11 kilos, and that soft suspension, the performance doesn't feel quite peppy enough. There is a lot of squishing when accelerating, and there's a lot of buckling while braking. So the overall excitement, well, there is not much of it again. The engine might not be exciting, but is it exciting out there in the twisties? So the steering on this bike, even though it's got a fairly large wheelbase and it is being braked out from the R, it is quite light. It is quite easy to tip into corners. It holds its line quite well. But once you start pushing this soft suspension, well, that throws things into a bit of a tizzy, and it's not entirely confidence inspiring when you're pushing it down on the corners. So if you want something that you can take the corner smoothly, calmly, precisely, well, this will do a good job. But if you want something that you can push through the bends, this isn't the one. Get the R. So the bite from the brakes, well, it is good. The feedbacks also, it's there about. The ABS calibration, it has been done keeping in mind the bike's adventure bias test. So in a whole, this bike has a fairly decent braking setup, but you can't just grab onto the brakes and expect it to stop. So because another thing is, the soft suspension will force a lot of nosedive, and that might cause a bit of a scary moment, a bit of nervousness. So as a whole, the brakes could have been better, but what it is here, it is good. So the twisties, not the GS's cup of tea, but will the Bavarian brew magic in the city? Let's find out. So there are a few things you need to keep in mind. The engine is not peppy. It doesn't have low down torque. The front end dive while braking is a bit unnerving. The seat height is too tall, and even for someone like me, well, I'm just barely tiptoeing. So for shorter riders, it will be a bit scary, it will be a bit nervous. Again, the engine has a tendency of stalling down. There will be unnecessary weight transfers, and that you will need to take care of. But once you get to know how to ride this bike, this is a pretty nice bike to roam around in the city, man.
The liquid cooling on this GS works pretty well. Even though there is this massive fairing covering primarily the top half, the engine stays pretty cool in almost all conditions, including the peak traffic ones. And since the suspension setup is quite plush, the ride quality around city is brilliant. Small disclaimer though, watch that rear end over sharp bumps. It might give you a jolt if you're not cautious enough. I am disappointed with the headlamp unit. It is quite small and the throw is quite high. The illumination is not powerful enough and the mounting could have been better as it keeps shaking and moving around.
So let's just reiterate all the points. Does it do the adventure bit quite nicely? It does an okay-ish job. Touring out on the highway? Not that great again. The performance bit, the handling bit, again, not quite exciting enough, nothing to thrill you. But it does surprisingly well in the city. It is a great city slicker. I will give it this though, it looks bloody good. It feels like a big bike, it looks like a big adventure bike. It's got great parts quality, great plastics, great switch gear. It's got great build quality apart from a few blemishes here and there. It looks like a GS, but it does not feel like a GS.
The only GS thing about this bike is its asking price of Rs 3.49 lakh ex-showroom. And at that price, it is very hard for us to recommend this to someone.